There we go, welcome to the Art Critique. Today I'm thinking of doing it for a weapon. So let's see, Cumulative Orchestra. Please allow me. There you go. I also have a new item. What is it? I wonder. The Chargin Targe. You know what? I had already something in mind, but let's call this a gift sign and do the critique for the Chargin Targe. Why not? I can do the weapon I had in mind some other day. It wasn't. There wasn't anything big behind it or anything. Or is it? I might as well do this. Okay, Chargin Targe, hooray! Let's do the critique for the Chargin Targe. As always, some disclaimers. First, this is not a proper in-depth game design discussion. I bump a bit into it, but you know, it's different. I'm focusing more on the visuals here. That's the first thing, and second, I'm gonna be following Feldman's method for this art critique, 4 steps in order: description, analysis, interpretation, and judgment. I'm gonna describe what I see on the description. I'm gonna talk about elements of art on the analysis. I'm going to interpret the creative vision, the interpretation, and look at the principles of art here to base myself for the judgment call on the judgment step and call this a successful or unsuccessful artwork. So let us begin. Description. What I see? Well, it is a shield with a spike in front, right? It's all covered in blood and there is a part of it which is downright broken. And on the back of it there is this the nailed part, I would say, to tie things up. It has this sort of a cross pattern in the front, right? Here. It has a cross pattern made out of wood and metal, it would seem. There's blood on the spike also. Metal spike, I guess I could add. What else? Funny enough, there is no handle for the shield. I guess that the moment just uses magnets or something to tie it to his arm or whatever, but okay. What else? Here we can see a bit of how the design of the shield works, the parts that you assemble, I suppose. What else? The broken part here. I guess that's good enough for the description. Some, again, maybe melded part here? No, probably not, right? It's just, I don't know. It's just that they don't look like nails, but whatever. Attached part also here with the small circle things. But yeah, I think that's a good enough description. Let's go to the analysis. Elements of art, I'm gonna be considering 8 here, which will be points, lines, shapes, forms, space, texture, color, and value. Let's begin with points. So, could we consider these things as points? I don't think I will for this critique. I think they are big enough to be considered small circles, let's say, or small bulbs, spheres. Depends on if we're talking about shapes or forms. What else? There's all these splashes of blood. We could talk about that. There are kind of some points here, you know, for the blood, but I think it's easier to consider it just a part of texture, which we're gonna get into later. But you know, it depends on how you look at it. I think I would prefer to look at it as texture only and talk about it on that element. What else? But if we're going to consider things like that, I don't think I see points otherwise. Yeah, I think the only points that I would see are basically the splotches of blood. So, yeah. Which are not even all the textures, but you know, a part of them. Red, I guess. So, with that said, what about the lines? So Team Fortress 2 has an aesthetic, 3D aesthetic that usually avoids lines. For example, here there's like this edges of two sides of the shield. There could be a line here, but there is none. You know, if there is a line here, how thick it is? I always ask that kind of question to help out. Don't think there is any here. What else? Around these notches, I guess, parts here, I believe there are shadows. I'm gonna talk about those for the element of value. What else? There are these things here, but I think they're better tied either to forms or texture, or at least that's, I think, how I would prefer to see them. I think it makes more sense to me. Yeah, with all those considerations, I don't think there would be any lines there. Even on the paint on the shield, it's just, there could be some lines, for example, there, but I don't think I see it. So I will be calling this absent of lines. With that said, let's move on to shapes now. As a reminder, shapes and forms, if you want to remind yourself which one is which, for art, shapes are always 2-dimensional, forms 3-dimensional. So for the shapes here, for example, just look at this angle, you kind of have this like roughly broken circle shape, right? It would be kind of a circle and with some imperfections, but then there's like this broken part, so you know, it's kind of a munched cookie, I guess, a bitten cookie or something. Symmetric on this side. If you look at it through this angle, for example, we see naturally the shapes get thinner, and we see the edged parts of the spike, edged shape of the spike. Through different angles we still see it. What else for shapes? Depending on the angle, there's also the circular shapes. There's a number of circular shapes, right? Because of the cross of the shield, we technically, what I see, we don't see the middle of the cross, right? So what we are seeing for shapes are a bunch of imperfect rectangles, or some rectangular-like shapes, I would say. In this one, perhaps not because of the part without paint, but in any case. What else? Also, you could say the planks have their own unique shapes, which are like broken some part and not. I don't think it's far to compare them to rectangles at this point. I think there are more of their own thing from how many differences there are. Also, I suppose there are a number of circles on these little parts, these other parts. There's so a lot of circular shapes, right? Throughout the shield, here again, and here on this attachable parts also. I don't know, I don't think these are nails, but I'm not sure exactly what these are. Whatever. Yeah, what else? Here also I suppose some rectangular-like shape because of this part here. But yeah, just a lot of circular shapes on many parts, some unique ones for the boards, the pointy one for the spike, and some rectangulars here and there on the paint, on the side of the shield. It depends on the angles that you look at, right? And naturally on angles like this one, oval shapes. There's gonna be oval. I don't see any oblong, I think. Mostly like circular and oval shapes. Yeah, circular, just adding oval to what I said before. So with that for shapes, let's talk about the forms. So the forms is a way different story, naturally. If you're talking about 3-dimensionality, we have this disc for the shield. Pretty flat disc, a bit thick, I suppose. But those are the main forms of it. There's also this kind of spherical half sphere in the middle of the shield with the spike, which has this four-sided pointy spike shape form. Spike form. With it's not like a conical spike. It's more of a four-sided spike, let's say. Probably there's a better way to describe it, but whatever. Either way, it's still like a very pointish form, right? Let's say. What else? And other than that, there are some flatness to some small discs for these attachable parts here also. What else? Oh, I just realized there's some very slight elevation on the back of the shield. Interesting. For the forms of it. And what else? Also some half spheres for these small attaching parts. Still don't think they are nails, but anyway. What else for forms? I think that's mostly it. And also we could say, not sure if this is better to talk about as form or texture, but I'll just mention it. There's all these like jagged, broken parts here of the shield. Let's call it for forms, right? I will consider them forms, considering how broken it all is. And I guess that's it for forms. Also, as I said before, actually, I was talking about forms and shapes. I think the element of space is going to be even better to describe this part, so let's get there eventually. Actually, right now, let's talk about the element of space. That's what I usually do. I usually do forms, then space. So for the element of space, by far the most notable one is on the bitten part of the cookie, on the broken part of the shield. So it has like some modest, mild use of space. Could be, it's not tight, and we would say it's not really a tight use of space, but it's not that generous either. Just some modest use of space. But more importantly, you have this like a lot of tightness in between the planks. I think that's the best element to describe this. So very thin gaps here, very thin gaps on a number of parts of the shield, also on this broken part of it. What else for space? Also here, a lot of tight spaces in there in general, like a shield full with imperfections in its design, right? And other than that, maybe we could talk about this gap here also, but I think that's in general it. Other than that, the rest is just expensive for the shield in relation to the rest of the frame of the picture. Okay, so if we're even considering the frame, let's talk about the element of texture now. Okay, so this ought to be interesting because finally let's talk about the splotches of blood. So there are many of them covering the shield. So it would be like a splashy texture, a splattered texture. After that we have like these woody textures for the wooden planks, some metallic texture for the metal parts. It might sound a bit obvious, but that's not always the case. But it helps. It's a technique you can use to describe the texture of the material, to describe its textures. Although I think it doesn't always cover everything. But about the woody textures, metallic textures, I think in this case it works. What else? Textures here on the back part of the shield, it has what's this, some sort of fabric texture, I would say, perhaps. Not sure exactly what material is this. I'm not sure, I'd have to research. I would probably find it, but let's not do that on stream. What else? And for texture, I consider the broken part as forms. Although, and I have already mentioned both the splatter and the wood textures. What else? I think that's in general it. And also we have the paint, I guess, with some like scraped off parts. I would say that's also texture, some scraped texture on the paint, or something like that. Perhaps I should say like scraped painted texture. I think that's a better way to put it. For example, this part to the left sounds like somewhat perfectly applied, but then the others is like a paint, but a kind of scraped off paint, you know, stuff like that. I think that's it for the textures: blood, wood, metal, paint, and Yeah, I think the wood could be maybe have some sort of rugged texture, possibly, or something like that. But I don't think I see it. Kind of because of the way, especially on the broken part, maybe they could have applied something like that. But I don't think I see it. So let's just move on. There are only 2 elements missing. Let's talk about the element of color now. Color easily noticeable are the gray, the brown, and the yellow, right? Gray for the metal, brown for the wood, and yellow for the paint. There's also red for the many blotches of blood, splashy part. Also on the back of it, there is this very big yellow part. And give me a second, please. I don't want to deal with matters that are none of my business, and hence the neighbors. Anyway, so yeah, I would say both gray, yellow, and brown are some light shade of brown, I would say. And this yellow, not sure what's the name of this shade of yellow. It's kind of my weakness when it comes to the names of shades of colors. But anyway, yeah. But I would say the gray, the brown, and the yellow are the strongest here, and after that there is a lot of red also. And finally, let's go to the element of value, light and darkness and stuff. So, for example, we see some shadows here between the half sphere part and the spike, right, for the forms. And for the presentation here, the values, the shadows change depending on the angle we look at it. But I think we can still say something. For example, in this angle, like the wood reflects, it's almost white, the way it's reflecting light. So it depends on the angle, on that very specific one. But funny enough, I don't see much work on value for the Chargin Targe. Depends on the angle. Here, okay, here on this angle again, there we see like some notable brightness, but it's more on some of the 2's angles. In general, I don't see that much reflection just on those obtuse angles and stuff. What about darkness? We see some small ones here and there, I guess. So there are some shadows on like these parts of the shield, like this is not exactly broken, right? But on some imperfect parts of the shield and the shield's design, there are some shadows. There are like some tiny one here, for example. There is a tiny one around here. Also, as I said, there is this one in the middle. I think that's it. And there is some like very faint brightness, I think, reflecting the shield through many angles. There are some specific ones. As I said, it gets more intense, but it's in general kind of faint. And yeah, and the shadows are on the spots that I mentioned already. So that's it for the analysis. Let's move on to the interpretation. So for the interpretation, I kind of want to Google something real quick just to help me. Context is always important for the interpretation stuff. But while I do that, I can already talk about the easy part, right? The fact that this is a weapon for in the game Team Fortress 2. Interesting. Okay. So first idea for the creative vision that I'm gonna interpret, easy part. This was a weapon for the DMM for Team Fortress 2. Okay, easy. What else? Also considering stuff like the name, the charging Targe. We also know about its game mechanics, right? That when you are equipping the charging Targe, you right click, you charge. And we have stuff like the spike, the presence of the spike, the unique shapes and forms of it, and stuff like that. So, and I guess also the blood. Also, all of that I think also convey the idea that this should be used to charge at people. And so I think that was an important idea for the creative vision, that this weapon was tied to charging at someone with your shield. You know, easy here. The spike, the name, the game mechanics. What else? Was part of the creative vision. I would say, which is even a bit, I think, close to the idea of a charge, but I would say like the ideas of conveying violence and aggression, let's say, were important for this, very easily tied to the charge, also, right? But there is all the blood on the shield, as I said, for textures and the colors, I guess. We could even, the spike also is a bit there. There's the broken part of the shield, so this means this was used for something rough, let's say, right? So, of that I believe, as I see it, I interpret that so to convey ideas of aggression, violence, have been used for something aggressive or violent, violent was important. Again, pretty close to the idea of a charge, but I think it warrants separating it. To me, I think they are different enough. Also, because if it's just about the charge, we could let me even sort my backpack. If it's just about the charge, also I probably should stop being lazy and melt my items someday. Where are the demo man ones? Here. If it's just about the charge, you have this splendid screen, for example, also, right? Or the Tide Turtle kind of doesn't look like something you would charge someone with, but in any case, yeah, to me at least. Anyway, I think I will separate these notions of charging someone with the charge and the idea of the charge having some violence, let's say, and aggression. Fights, battles. Anything else I would interpret for the creative vision here? Okay. And also, I believe, also it's somewhat easy, I believe, to get to that interpretation, but I will add it. I believe also the idea of something medieval was very important for the creative vision here. Because technically you can, if it's just about violence and charging people, I don't know if today's riot shields are able to do something like that. Probably not the charge part. But in any case, I will add as another idea for the creative vision here, this the feels of something medieval. Specifically, either medieval or it could be something from the antiquities maybe, but not Roman, that's for sure, for example, or Greek. It would be something perhaps, not sure, Viking or Celtic. I don't know if Celtic fits the bill here. I think some Viking aesthetics would fit the bill here. But anyway, yeah, so either something medieval or something to convey feelings of something either medieval or relating to specific cultures, tribes from the antiquities. One of those two ideas. Either way, something from the past, from one of those time periods. And anything else I would add to the interpretation of the creative vision here? I was looking at I was googling the name Targe specifically. Apparently Targe is an archaic spelling of the word target. So the fact that it's archaic, I think, helps. I think it's already kind of in the idea of something medieval or from the antiquities. And the fact that it's a target is interesting, but I believe that's like also imbued in the idea of something for you to charge people with, you know, because you see them coming at you, and either that or you probably the idea that they see you coming at you, and then, so they see kind of a target. I don't know, kind of a rough interpretation here, but that's what I'm going to roll with for this critique. And I think that's gonna be it for my interpretation here. So our 4 ideas for the creative vision are going to be: 1, to make a weapon for the demo man 1442, 2, to make something related to charging at people, the name, the game mechanics, 3, for something that conveys something of violence, aggression stuff, again easily tied to charging, but anyway, and charging at someone, and 4th, the idea of something either medieval or from some specific cultures from the antiquities, stuff like that. So from medieval times, either way. So let's move on to the judgment step. For the judgment, I'm gonna be considering 6 principles of art: movement, unity, balance, proportion, contrast, and emphasis. And let's begin then. Just a recap. The principles of art are basically how the authors use the elements. So that's why when we compare that to the creative vision, we are going to basically say, did you accomplish what you wanted to accomplish? And that's why we're going to call this successful or not. So that's the idea. Let's talk about the principle of movement here. Just a reminder, it does not have to do with animations. It's all about how a work of art can guide your eyes move around. Your eyes around in some path or direction. So for the principle of movement here, easily on the spike, right? Live through the shapes and forms of the spike, which is a pointy one, like it kind of directs my eyes to the edge of it. Also, I think the colors are helping a bit because it's like it's cool. In general, excepting the blood splatter, you can see that's like gray. I don't think I see much textures of it, but in any case. Also, I just realized that the light kind of reflects this well on the spike on some angles, right? Interesting. Maybe I could have said that for the analysis on value, but anyway, whatever. Okay, so there's the spike for the principle of movement. What else? I think that's mostly it. I'm thinking maybe the broken part a bit, but I'm probably thinking of other principles. Not sure it moves my eyes exactly. Let me blink a minute to try to reset things and see if I change my mind. I don't know. No, I'm thinking of another principle here, not movement. So yeah, movement just on the spike. So does any of that help with the idea of Demoman Weapon 1442? Well, basically I believe so in a very specific way. It's tied to the charge mechanic, right? That only Demoman has. So it's kind of pointing forward. That's the moment when he charges, he always charges forward. You can move around, change where you're looking at while you're charging, but you always begin charging forward. So that's naturally tied to the game mechanic there. Also, only the Demoman on Team Fortress 2 has. I don't know other games that have a Demoman or other games that have a charge mechanic, but anyway. So I believe that's the principle of movement is, helping communicate that here. So yeah, and easily, if I'm going to say that, then we're going to easily get to the charging part also, right? So if it's kind of pointing forward, and if you're going to charge at someone, you're usually going to go forward. You're not like crab walking to someone. If you're gonna charge at them, you're not backing away. You're not walking backwards. If you're charging someone, you walk forward to charge at someone. So with that and the way apparently this shield was supposed to be used, it's funny because there is no handle on the back part for the Demoman to hold the shield. But if we ignore that, still I believe. The expected way to use the shield is still like with you. This should be the back part of the shield. Yeah, if it was the other way around, the spike would be hitting you. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So yeah, without that said, I believe this also naturally ties to the idea of the charge, without considering the game mechanics. And if you're gonna charge at someone, is there a way to charge someone with a non-violent manner? No, maybe. If you're just like going to tickle someone, I guess. But that's probably an exception, right? If you're charging at someone, very easily it's I think very easy to associate that with ideas of violence and stuff. But would I go that far? Would I want to say that every time you charge at someone that conveys violence and aggression? Ah, man. I'm gonna have to adjudicate here, I believe, for this critique. You know what? I think I want to look at the definition of the dictionary to help me out here. Of a charge. Let's see. I'm gonna use that to base my decision here. Accuse someone, demand, rush forward in attack, rush aggressively towards someone in attack, move quickly and with impetus. Yeah, okay. So technically, one of the definitions of charging is to just move quickly with impetus. Like I said, you can do that if you want to, I don't know, tickle someone. But I do believe it's all in general very close to the notions of violence, and considering the context and everything else, I'm I think I will be considering that communicating. Oh, okay. I was gonna say communicating the charge also communicates violence, but maybe I'm doing things wrong because I shouldn't be. That's not the question we should be asking, right? This question is, does an arrow pointing forward communicate violence? Not charge, violence. Yeah, okay. This can get confusing sometimes, right? But let's try to do things properly here. Yeah, just like, okay, just the arrow pointing forward, I don't think it communicates violence necessarily, right? Because, you know, every time you're going forward doesn't mean you are being violent. But the spike, the principle of movement tied to the spike, which seems to be something, you know, pointy and possibly dangerous, and the blood covering the spike, that I think easily, apparently blood, I don't know, ketchup. Either way, I think that we could tie easily to violence, you know. So the fact that it's something sharp and possibly dangerous to someone, the blood, I think that we could tie easily to violence. And so, to that way, safely, I believe we can say that the principle of movement is helping to convey violence here and aggression. And finally, the idea of something medieval, or from some specific tribes of the antiquities or people. So, in here, if our attention has been called to this spike, I believe that's probably also a very good way to communicate that, because when do you ever see this kind of spike outside of those time periods? On the, I don't know, Stone Age, we didn't have the technology to do this kind of stuff, and also the periods on prehistory also. And on modern ages, we are able to produce this sort of objects, but we only, okay, fair enough. We use it for decoration and stuff like that. I don't know. So it's not an exclusive of the prehistory and time period and stuff. It is something that is still nowadays. I don't know. In gates, on architecture, we can see this kind of design on some other contexts. So okay. So does that help convey idea by itself? Just the spikes, the idea that it's medieval from the antiquities. I mean, it's not too far off, right? Because it was a design that was used on a number of stuff on the Middle Ages and or the antiquities for weapons, also for gates like we do nowadays, for example. It's not too far off, but I'm not gonna say this is enough just to say medieval by itself. I think, I don't know, it's still a very strong tie, right? But I don't know, I think by itself, no. Not by itself. That's what I'm going to decide for this critique. Okay, moving on, let's go for the principle of unity / variance. Variance. Unity is about how different parts of the artwork apparently look they are working together through one way or another. There are many ways to accomplish unity: continuity, repetition, proximity, patterns. And there is also variety, which is the opposite of unity. We kind of talk about both together. At least that's what I'm doing here. Some authors believe you should consider them as separate principles, but anyway. Variety. So variety is the opposite of unity. So if there's something unique in the artwork, something that's very different from everything else, that also it's a way to help accomplish the vision. So for unity, variety, let's see here. What do I see? Well, I see unity strongly on the repetition of the textures and colors of the metal parts. Also on the shapes and forms of these things here. Not sure what they are exactly, but anyway. Also on the repetition of the color and textures of the wood through both faces of the shield, also on the color, the same shade of yellow on both on the cross and on the back part of it. Also, what else? I could say proximity of the blood and the pointy part, that seems to communicate some sort of story that happened there, right? The proximity of the shapes and forms of the spike and the color and texture of the blood kind of communicates something, working together. What else? Also the repetition blood all around and on the back and the front. I think that's also unity. And for variety, I would say I see variety, for example, on the unique shapes and forms of the spike. Nothing like it on any other part of the Chargin Targe. Also on the unique forms of the broken parts, and I guess also shapes. There's variety there. And I guess also on the blood splatters, there is variety there. On the way that they are laid about, perhaps it's kind of like randomly splattered, doesn't seem to follow some sort of pattern, so variety there. And with all that said, okay, so does any of that tie to the idea of a weapon for the demo man? 14 Fortress 2. Again, only the idea that of the spike again. No, not sure. I was going to say the spike and the charge, but maybe when it comes to movement, I think it's easy. But when it comes to unity and variety, man. No, you know what? This may be a bit far-fetched, but as I said, there's the unity of the blood splatters and the edge of the spike, which seems to communicate that someone poked someone with it. And I'm gonna be considering that it's helping because you can damage someone with your shield in Team Fortress 2. That's a mechanic, because there is a number of things that happen when you charge on Team Fortress 2, right? You get a crit, you move real fast, what else? And also if you bump into someone, you damage them. And you can kill someone, and because of that game mechanic, I'm gonna consider that the unity here of the blood on the tip of the spike and the shapes and forms of the spike, I'm gonna be considering that helps convey. It's tied to the vision and only the demo man has the charge mechanic. So that I will consider is tied to the vision of a weapon for the demo man 14 Fortress 2 because of that game mechanic. What else? What about the idea of a charge? Also, I would be considering even if you could damage someone without the charge, since you can damage charge. But for the idea of the charge itself, there's unity and variety here helping with that. This time, if I would just say this part here, I think it's a bit far-fetched. Because that's not the only way that you can damage someone. I don't think just saying that you damage someone with a spike means that you charge at them. So It could be something as simple as you're in a battlefield, someone in front of you just died, and then their body gets on your shield. Then you know shake them off, but then some of their blood's gonna fall on the spike and stuff like that. Just like from the top of my hand, one example of a way that we could have blood here without a charge, or simply if you're fighting someone on the battlefield and then you take an opportunity to, you know, stab them with the shield. So I don't see just blood on the tip of it as communicating necessarily a charge. And I don't see anything else here helping convey that for everything that I said. Ah no, maybe there is some. There is the patterns of the cross. So of the yellow, the repetition, the way they are laid about, their shapes and color, is a pattern that is kind of a target. And again, maybe I think that kind of helps convey the idea of a charge. If you think is on the perspective of whoever is looking at someone charging, which is gonna be something extremely noticeable and coming fast at you, and so I believe like the way you target the person with your eyes in that scenario, or maybe if the charger is targeting you. But in any case, I see it as helping a bit conveying that idea. I don't know if that's a bit far-fetched actually, but I will be considering it. I don't think art needs to be like obvious all the time. Like the you know, because this is obvious, blood on the spiky part. Oh my god, what happened here? This is kind of obvious and very easy, or at least a very easy interpretation. It's very easy to interpret what could have happened. But I still believe the charged concept here, I think it's strong enough to convey it enough for me. So, okay, with that said, now the idea of violence and aggression. Okay, this is the easiest one, right? Because again, the blood on the tip of the spike. And even if we didn't have the Team Fortress 2 mechanic of damaging someone with the charge, this I think is easily conveys aggression and violence, so you know. And I could also mention the variety on the blood splatters and the repetition and the unity of them at the same time with the repetition. And also mention variety on the broken part of the shield. I mentioned before that maybe a way that could have happened, let's say if you could think about it, is through wear and tear or through using battle, something rough. So you know, I think that also says something there. And finally, what about the idea of something medieval and or from some tribes of the antiquities? Okay, now I think this is probably a strong fit here, because I said there's repetition on the shades and colors of the wood on both parts. There's repetition on the shapes and colors and textures of the metal. So that's very easily tied to the materials of this shield. And everything on the antiquities was made out of, okay, not everything, but many stuff on the antiquities on the Middle Ages were made out of woods and metal, right? Because we didn't have the Industrial Revolution yet. And all the wonderful and the good and the bad that brought us. So considering the materials here, there was also a lot of stuff made out of stone, for example, in the Middle Ages. Or you know, fabric, whatever. But in any case, and other metals, not just iron. This should be iron, possibly, right? I don't know, probably. But yeah, I believe that helps convey it, and also the paint on the shield. And now that I think about it, just the fact that this is a shield, if you're thinking about in this case, the repetition of the shapes and forms, that easily conveys the fact that this is a shield. And so what would you use a shield for? Nowadays we have riot shields, but very classic weapon for combat on those time periods, you know. I'm not sure if there are other common uses for shields outside of combat on those time periods specifically. Because, for example, after we had gunpowder, I think nobody used shields anymore for combat. So, and before that, we learned how to make shields pretty early, right? But I guess on prehistory, we would only use lances, I guess. Perhaps bows and arrows at best. I don't know. But yeah. So I'm gonna consider that it's kind of well tied to those time periods, the fact that this is a shield and that's being conveyed through shapes and forms through Unity. I guess it's helping with that side of the vision. So now for another principle of art. I usually would go for contrast here. I guess I don't see why not. Follow my usual order. You don't need to, by the way, but you know, I just do it because to help me out, remember. So for contrast, I think I sit very strongly on the forms here. Not shapes that much, but on the forms, on the spiky protruding shape of it getting out, in contrast with the very flat surface and forms of the shield. I see a lot of contrast there. What else for contrast? There are also, I think, smaller ones, let's say, weaker ones, lesser ones. Stuff like, if there is a difference, there is contrast, juxtapose the difference, so even stuff like, there's the yellow and the brown, there is some contrast there. I would say there is some contrast between the gray and the texture of the metal and the wood. There's some contrast there, and there's actually probably the second strongest source of contrast to me, of the wood / the versus the metal, with both color and textures. And after that there is, I guess, the yellow in contrast with everything. And also other smaller sources of contrast. There is the blood splatters through color and texture in contrast with the gray of the metal and their textures too. So that's how I like a bunch of textures. I could even talk about contrast in space, because there is like this use of space here in contrast with a more unified, let's say, forms and shapes, even though have some gaps, but that's also some contrast. Anyway, with all that said, does any of that tied to conveying that this is a weapon for the demo man 1442? So now we have to me the strongest one was the contrast between the forms of the spike and the flatness of the shield. And there is also the other stuff. I don't think I see it that strongly tied. I would have to again talk about either the charge or the mechanic. Hey, thanks for the follow, Kerry Thomas. I would have to talk about one of those ideas, but I'm not sure that principle works that well here. Hello, how do you do? I'm fine, thanks for asking. Hope you're doing well too. I'm doing art critique right now. So let's see. Contrast here. I don't know. Maybe we could go for a similar logic than the principle of movement, since the principle of movement was also conveyed through shapes and forms. When I was talking about Unity, it was more about the color and texture, the pointy part with the blood. But here for contrast, being the protruding shape, protruding forms of it, could that help convey the charge? Could that be tied to help convey the charge mechanic? Where are you from? I am Brazilian. Hoi Barry. I'm not sure if the protruding forms here tie well. I think I'm gonna have to adjudicate again. I think I will say nah. I think just having this protruding forms, I wouldn't say it's tied well enough to the 1443 and the demo man. I don't see it conveying that well the charge, I don't see it conveying that well the mechanics, for example the damage thing. if there was something like, oh, if you are standing still and someone touches the spike, they take damage, maybe I would consider it. But since you have to charge at people for that, I don't see the contrast here helping that much convey that this is a weapon for Team Fortress 2 for the demo man. Oh well. Let's move on. What about the idea of something? What was it? For something that you can charge with, you would use in a charge, stuff like that. So for the contrast here, why you don't have use graphic stuffs? I assume you're talking about software. Because I rather look at this kind of stuff in game, because then we're considering as I say, the creator's presentation, how the author wanted us to appreciate the art, let's say. In this case yes, but yeah, actually I do art for gamers and streamers. Thank you, Carrie Thomas, but I'm not looking for that right now. But thanks for the offer. Anyway, where was I? Okay, so there is some contrast, as I said, on the yellow. I wonder if that could help convey that this is some sort of target, and there's that whole idea again. I'm not sure by contrast that makes sense to me. For the contrast, we talked about that for the pattern. Like, I think the pattern, it's what makes it look like a target. The contrast here. Okay, have a nice day, you too. The contrast here. I know what, maybe, but not just because of the contrast of the white, yellow, and the brown, but I think also with the gray and the brown and the yellow, I think that's kind of, all of those working together, I think create a nice contrast that makes it look like a target with all of those together. So it's not just the yellow, just the patterns. It's kind of the cross plus the spike in the middle. I think that could be, I see some contrast there, which in a way I guess it's also tied well to the forms. And that I believe could help communicate that you are being charged, that there is a target in the middle of it, let's say. I guess that makes sense to me, I guess. So what about the idea of something violent and the aggression and stuff? Not easy now, right? As mentioned, many smaller sources of contrast that I think are tied to that. Blood splatters on the metal and even a bit on the wood, contrast between the space of the broken part in the rest. What else? Yeah, stuff like that, for example. And finally, what about something medieval and or from specific cultures of the antiquities? I guess the contrast between the wooden material and the metallic material again ties to the technology they had, right? Yeah, well, that was my argument for Unity, so I guess I'm gonna use it again here. Don't see why not. Let's be consistent. Yeah, I guess technically this could be made of other materials. Maybe if this was made out of plastic, you know, it wouldn't be easy to believe this was from somewhere in the past. But in any case, and you also, I am aware that we can like make shields like this in real life nowadays, just like they did in the past. But naturally, it's all about like how much you communicate that kind of stuff. So yeah, if in real life, that's why, in other words, riot shields nowadays are not made out of wood and metal. Basically, I guess that's my argument here. So anyway, with that said, that was it for contrast. Let's get into emphasis. Emphasis, where do I see here? Emphasis, emphasis or hierarchy, I consider it, both names for this principle, both ideas. Some authors don't. I believe I see two strong points of emphasis slash hierarchy here. Can you figure out? One is the spike, through their forms and shapes, and especially that, and maybe a bit of the blood on the through textures and color, but mostly shapes and forms. And another source of emphasis is the broken part of the shield. Again, through shapes and forms. So I think those are the 2 points of it would be hierarchy. Not sure which one is higher on the hierarchy. Probably the spike. And they have like a greater focus than the rest. So does any of that help convey the idea that this is a weapon for Team Fortress 2 for the moment? Again, just emphasis on the spike. No, I don't think so. Neither on the shield. I suppose that on Team Fortress 2 we get damaged, but our weapons don't get damaged, so I don't see that. That's a way that things could be tied, right? So in other words, maybe this could be a good weapon for Zelda Breath of the Wild, where your weapons get damaged or whatever. But anyway, yeah, but I don't see that conveying that this is for Team Fortress 2 necessarily. What about the idea of something that you charge someone with? This time just for emphasis, for the hierarchy. Don't think so. Again, because just having a spike and a broken part, I don't see it. Maybe the target-like thing helps a bit convey the emphasis, but maybe not. I mean, but I don't know. But I don't think the emphasis is on the stripes. It's on this spike specifically. So I'm gonna just be considering that's not helping convey that this thing is used for charging at someone necessarily. And what else? I could be wrong here actually, but I still think like you could use this spike for a combat without needing to charge someone with it. I think. Also because just the idea of charging at someone with a shield, I don't know how much that is reasonable in real life. Or something. I don't know, I would expect for people to charge at each other, I don't know, with lances perhaps, but anyway. I'm not a historian, I wouldn't know. Let's just move on and talk about what about the idea of violence and stuff. Easy now, right? Emphasis on. I said before that this broken part seems like something. It doesn't seem like it was damaged just from use from the weather, wind and water or whatever, erosion. It seems like it was downright broken in some sort of impact at one point. So easily that could be tied to violence or aggression in one way. Not even sure you can get this done accidentally, right? This kind of damage to this shield. So yeah, I think it helps convey the notion of violence or aggression. And the spike again, something dangerous. There is the blood on the tip of it, which I think helps a bit convey emphasis. To have emphasis. And okay. And finally, what about the idea of something medieval and stuff like that? Being emphasis on the broken part and the spike. Emphasis hierarchy. Funny enough, because there are emphasis on both of those, maybe we have that argument again of the materials of the wood and metal. Again. Not sure actually. I will say not. I will say that the broken part does not showcase that well that this is made out of wood. as much as the textures and colors of it. So, because that's what I said, that's about emphasis and contrast, right? The colors and the textures. But here the emphasis I think is conveyed mostly through space, the space and the forms. And I don't think that's necessarily conveying that this was made out of wood. I think like some other materials could also have the similar damage to them, you know, form these kinds of space and forms. So yeah, and the spike I don't think it's enough by itself. So okay, let's move on now to the principle of balance, which is about how things look in some sort of state of equilibrium or tension, how even or uneven that is. Does it look like it's bending? Does it look like it's going to break? So for this, the balance I think it's interesting because the broken part helps a lot with, I think, conveying unbalance, visual unbalance, right? It would, I mean, right now it's already broken, so it's not tensioned anymore, but it harms a bit the equilibrium, right? Does it? Depends on how you would place it, right? Man, maybe I'm mixing that up with Unity here in Variety. Actually, I think, yeah, that's the thing. It's already broken, so I don't think we can. I think this in general is balanced. You know, if you just leave it there, it's gonna stay there. If you leave it on the ground, then it's gonna stay on the ground. Stuff like that. Let's say. And I don't think I see tension anywhere, so yeah, I guess it's like in general balanced and in equilibrium visually. It's just like the broken part captured my eyes, you know. If this was, if we had some other part of it apparently being tensioned or something, but anyway, yeah. Visually I don't think it's about equilibrium and tension here, it's just variety, I believe. So without that said, does any of that, so it's mostly in equilibrium, in general in equilibrium, I guess. Maybe there's some tiny lacks of it somewhere, but I don't know. So does any of that help convey the idea this is a weapon 1442 for the demo man? No. Just being general balanced, if there's not even like sort of points of lack of equilibrium or tension to talk about that, so you know, don't think it's conveying anything. True balance. What about the idea that you charge people with it? Again, true balance, I don't think I see it. This is interesting because technically the protruding part kind of skews the center of mass of it a little bit to the front, but so little, I believe, because it's like shaped like a spike, you know, so the base of it's closer to the center of mass, which without the spike anyway, and it keeps getting thinner, and so it's like minimal, the lack of balance that it brings. Honestly, I'm not sure I even see it visually here. Don't know, it's just like well designed, let's say, so it doesn't look unbalanced visually. So yeah, I don't think I see it helping convey the idea of this being used to charge at someone or anything. What about the idea of violence and aggression and stuff like that? Yeah, again, even if I were to consider the spike, I wouldn't consider just the spike, I would consider also the base of it, and so, you know. And the base of it's not necessarily tied to aggression, I would say. That's a bit perhaps nitpicking, but in any case, it's just so... It's such a... basically scraping the bottom of the barrel, if I'm gonna count the spike here, that's conveying a lack of equilibrium. So I think I won't do it, personally, for this critique. So if that's not conveying violence or anything of true balance, none of that is. And finally, what about the idea of something medieval or from some tribes of the antiquities? Again, balance-wise, I don't think so. Yeah. So balance isn't helping with anything. And finally, the last principle of art is the principle of proportion. It's all about the different sizes of different things and how they help convey something, the vision, right? How they accomplish the vision. Also, if there is some sort of notable dimensions on parts of the artwork. So for the sizes, we have stuff like I usually try to place things into scales because I believe if there's something very specific on some sort of common idea on one scale and many things with the same size, I think that helps convey a bit the vision. And if I were to do that, I would place scale things as let's say the board of the shield as the biggest thing here. After that, this part here, the back of it, and probably, and that's where things, that doesn't always work because the metal part of the shield is would be kind of weird. Are we gonna just measure the raw volume of it or something? You know, makes more. That's why I think looking at the dimensions is also a good deal. But just to finish, I would say that like the board of the shield has a bigger scale than the back part, which has a bigger scale than the spike, and smaller than that there are these things, these parts for attaching the shield. Still don't think they're nails, and including this, and also then there's like smaller than the ones on the front is these ones on the back. But yeah. And also when it comes to dimensions, looking at any notable dimensions here, this spike has unique shapes and forms, right, as we said before. But for their dimensions specifically, I don't know. I guess I would say that like the edges of the shield has this like thinnish and very long dimension to it. What else? I think that's good enough for talking about the principle of proportion here. So, does any of that help convey that this is a weapon for the moment 1442? You know, I'm thinking something here. The unique dimensions of the edge of the shield, which is made out of metal, I wonder if that could convey that this is some sort of protection. This is a shield for protection, because the shield also has the game mechanics of reducing bomb and fire damage, right? And so I wonder if it makes sense to say that so the edge of the shield with these unique dimensions of it, this unique proportion of some metal thing. I guess to me it conveys a bit of the idea of protection, because also even the metal part, I think it was like for practical purposes, the idea is that if a sword tries to hit the shield, then it hits on the metal part or something, and so it's harder to chop at the wood, I would guess. Again, I'm not a historian or a weapons expert or anything, but in any case, I believe visually it's helping convey a bit. Also because iron is such a broad use material, but one of the uses of iron is to make something more resistant, especially in the Middle Ages. We had plate mail, you know, full plate armor. So it's a hard material, let's say. But is that being conveyed visually? To me at least, I think it is. And I think so. If the proportions or the dimensions of the metal part of the shield, the edge of it is conveying protection, also because it's protecting the shield, right? Not just you, but your shield. And I tie that to the mechanic of the shield reducing the damage that you receive. I'm not gonna get into the specifics of being bomb or fire damage, because if it's fire, I wonder if it's hot enough to melt the metal. But anyway, I'm just gonna leave it a little bit simpler and yeah, consider that. And okay, so helping with the conveying that mechanic of the charging Targe. What about the idea of something that you charge people with? For the sizes of it, again, like, the spike has its own scale, you know. I don't think there's anything with a similar size than the spike here for the shield, even though I don't think the dimensions of it are that notable, just the shapes and forms, especially the forms. But again, I don't think a spike is enough to convey a charge. I think the target, the patterns of a target help convey more. I think the principle of movement actually helps a bit, you know. If it's a principle of movement, I think it's fine. But for the others, I think just a spike. I don't think I see it. And finally not. So we still have another one. What about the idea of conveying aggression, violence, stuff like that, for the sizes of it? And dimensions and stuff. I don't think I see it helping whatsoever. Again, the spike has its own size scale, but is a spike alone? Okay, I have to consider the spike with the blood. Right? Is that fair actually? Should I do that? I don't know. The blood also has its own size, you know. We should consider that. I guess if I would consider the blood splatters, they would in general have a roughly similar size to these attachment parts, I guess I would say. But anyway, for the sizes and for the proportions of the spike to convey violence and aggression, not sure, don't think it's good enough. I would have to add the blood or consider more stuff together, you know. It's easier to think about like that when we think about Unity, but just looking at the sizes of it, I wouldn't say the size of a spike is enough to convey aggression and violence. And finally, what about the idea of of something medieval? Like further sizes and proportions. I guess again the edge of the shield is something that I don't expect to see anywhere else. Because it's such a specific thing, right? It's some metal part designed to protect the shield, which was something to be used a lot, most like on that time period, Antiquities, Middle Ages. Could I find a rough comparison nowadays for something like this? I don't know. Like we have like. This kind of stuff, but it's not made out of metal nowadays. If you're gonna, I don't know, protect parts of handles of, I don't know, an umbrella or something, they're not like usually made out of metal. So in this case, since it's proportions, it's shapes and forms, but also I think, should I also consider the colors and textures, because that's what's conveyed, that's made out of metal, right? I don't know. I guess I will consider, but if I'm talking about these small things, it wouldn't be adding to the proportion of the edge of the shield. Tough call here. I'm glad I have the music playing for moments like this that I have to think, so it doesn't get too boring. Okay. I'm gonna consider that it is conveying that's medieval, just because I think like this specific size and proportions and dimensions, I don't think I see it for stuff for the design of objects nowadays. As I said, I mentioned an umbrella, for example, that could have a handle with some protection to it. Obviously not to protect you from swords, but anyway. But just looking at the proportions of it, you know, shapes and forms, I'm gonna guess there are not like many designs nowadays that follow this appearance. And so I'm gonna guess we could tie that to visually that helps convey that this is from the Middle Ages or Antiquities. I'm kind of taking risks because I don't know enough of the many designs that we have for products. I'm not a designer, but anyway, that's my views here, and that's it. So let's move on to make the final call here. Well, from what I remember, at least each one of the ideas of the vision was conveyed with at least one of the principles. Like just movement helped it convey 3 of them, right? I believe it was both the the mechanic of the charge plus the charging plus violence because of the blood. I'm kind of being consistent right now, right? Because if I was considering the blood when I talk about movement, shouldn't I be considering it on the other stuff that I said? Man, maybe I screwed up somewhere. But I believe that if I was being inconsistent in some points, if I were to correct them, I think I would be tending to considering that more principles are helping with the vision instead of less. So I believe this is still a solid conclusion. So what I'm going to say is that this is a successful piece of art. I believe so in general. Just if we're gonna try to find one for each of the principles, I think the movement for the charge mechanic and some other stuff, it's good enough for it. The unity of blood on the top tip of the spike for aggression violence, the contrast of the target for charging at someone, and the also contrast and unity for the materials, medieval materials, and proportion if we're gonna talk about the edge of it. Yeah, okay, no, I think it's a solid one, even if I made some inconsistencies somewhere along the way. It's a successful work of art. Congratulations, Valve, or whoever created the charging Targe. Think you pulled it off, whatever you wanted to achieve with it. That was it for the critique. Join me on the next one.